Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hello, Catholic pilgrims. Welcome to day 95 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. So we're going to jump right in today because our readings are a little bit longer, but so interesting. We're getting a sneak peek into Sister Faustina's home life, family life, and it's a nice little break from convent life, and I think you'll find the readings today very interesting. So we are reading from Notebook 1, numbers 395 through 400. February 15th, 1935. A visit for a few days to my family home to see my dying mother. When I learned that my mother was seriously ill and near death, and that she had asked that I come home as she wanted to see me once more before dying, a host of emotions were awakened in my heart. As a child who sincerely loves its mother, I wanted very much to fulfill her wish, but I left this to God and resigned myself completely to His will. Paying no heed to the ache in my heart, I followed God's will. On the morning of my name day, February 15th, Mother Superior gave me a second letter from my family and granted me permission to go to my parents' home to fulfill the wish and request of my dying mother. I began at once to make the necessary preparations for the journey and left Vilnius in the evening. I offered the whole night for my seriously ill mother, that God might grant her the grace of losing none of the merits of her suffering. My traveling companions were very kind. Several women of the Sodality of Mary were in the same compartment with me. I sensed that one of them was suffering greatly and fighting a difficult battle in her soul, and I began to pray in spirit for this soul. At 11 o'clock, these women went to another compartment for a chat, leaving only the two of us behind in the carriage. I could feel that my prayer was causing this soul's struggle to become even fiercer. I did not console her, but prayed all the more fervently. Finally, the lady turned to me and asked if she was obliged to fulfill a certain promise which she had made to God. At that moment, I received inner knowledge of the promise and replied, "You are absolutely obliged to keep it, or else you will be miserable for the rest of your life. This thought will pursue you everywhere and give you no peace." Surprised at my answer, she opened her soul to me. She was a school teacher. When she was about to take her examination, she had promised God that if she did well in her examination, she would devote herself to His service, that is, enter a religious congregation. She passed the examinations very well, but, she said, when I entered into the hustle and bustle of the world, I no longer wanted to enter a convent. However, my conscience has given me no peace, and despite amusements, I am always unhappy. After a lengthy conversation, she was immediately changed and told me that she would immediately take steps to enter a convent. She asked me to pray for her, and I felt that God would be generous with His grace. That morning, I arrived in Warsaw, and at 8 o'clock that evening I was already at home. What a joy it was for my parents and for the whole family. It is difficult to describe it. My mother's health had improved a bit, but the doctor gave no hope of complete recovery. After greeting each other, we knelt down to thank God for the grace of being able to be together once again in this life. When I saw how my father prayed, I was very much ashamed that after so many years in the convent, I was not able to pray with such sincerity and fervor. And so I never cease thanking God for such parents. Oh, how everything had changed beyond recognition during those 10 years. The garden had been so small, and now I could not recognize it. My brothers and sisters had still been children, and now they were all grown up. I was surprised that I did not find them as they had been when we parted. Stanley accompanied me to church every day. I felt that he was very pleasing to God. On the last day, when everyone had left the church, I went before the Blessed Sacrament with him, and together we recited the Te Deum. After a moment of silence, I offered his soul to the sweetest heart of Jesus. How easy it was to pray in that little church. I remembered all the graces that I had received there and which I had not understood at that time and had so often abused. I wondered how I could have been so blind. And as I was thus regretting my blindness, I suddenly saw the Lord Jesus radiant with unspeakable beauty, and He said to me with kindness, my chosen one. I will give you even greater graces that you may be the witness of my infinite mercy throughout all eternity. So I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed today's readings. It was nice to get a peek into Sister Faustina's, family life, her going home. It's sad that her mother is not doing well and is going to pass away, but it's so nice to know that she got to go back and spend some time with her and her siblings, who she hasn't seen in a very long time. Everything's changed. It's just a good break from the convent life to actually see her kind of, out in the world, being with her family. What I wanted to talk about today was paying attention to those around you. So 2 years ago, my family went to Montreal, Canada for kind of a graduation gift for our oldest daughter when she graduated from high school. We wanted to take a family vacation, but we wanted it to be educational and a place that had a lot of Catholic history that was close by, and Montreal fulfilled all those requirements. So we went to Montreal and we dedicated ourselves to walking the streets or riding on the subway. And we think one of the best ways to get to know a city is to put boots on the ground and just walk it, or ride public transportation, because it really helps you get a feel for the city. So we spent a lot of time on the subway. They have a great subway system there. And whenever we were on, the subway, everybody had headphones in and their faces in their phones. I don't like my family to do that, and so my husband and I, we make it a point that we don't get our phones out unless we're actually looking something up for, directions or something like that, that we just look around us and pay attention and watch people. We're kind of people watchers. And it really kind of made me sad riding on that subway, because I would have liked to have interacted with the people on the subway, talk to them about what it's like to live in Montreal. Most of them could speak pretty good English, so, being able to ask them questions would have been fun. But nobody was, open to engagement. And at one point, we were riding on the subway one night, and it was pretty packed because everybody was coming home from work, and everybody had their face in their phone, and everybody had their headphones in. And I looked over, and probably 3 people in front of me, there was a young woman sitting in a chair, in one of the subway chairs, and she was trying very, very hard to hold back her tears. I could tell that she was extremely upset about something, and her eyes would well up, and she would, look kind of very distressed, and something was clearly wrong. I don't know if somebody died in her life, or maybe she had, had a bad breakup, or, she was clearly upset about something. And here she was on the subway, packed with people. I'm not saying you always have to share your dirty secrets, but nobody even noticed except for me. And at one point, I was just kind of looking at her, and I was praying for her, for whatever it was that was bothering her. I didn't want to pry, but she looked at me, and I looked at her, and there was a deep sorrow in her face, like, I wish I could tell you what's wrong. And I wanted so bad to go over to her and just ask, is everything okay? Is there anything I can do for you? She didn't have to tell me anything, but I desired so badly to go to her and try to be a comfort to her, but the subway was packed and there was no way making it over to her. But when our eyes locked, there was just a kind of understanding between us and a very real human connection. And then the subway stopped, and my family got off, and she stayed on. But I've often thought about her, and that's one of the things that we've lost with modern day technology, is that human connection when we're out with people. Sister Faustina is sitting on probably a train. I think it's a train. And she's got other women around her, and she notices and she senses in her soul that there's another soul that's really struggling. And so she's very attuned to that. And so she starts to pray. She doesn't pry or ask questions. She just starts praying. And then she feels the soul struggling even more. And it's probably that lady's soul telling her, reach out to Sister Faustina. You can trust and talk to her. And so because Sister Faustina is sitting there and she's open, she's, placed herself there, she's not being, shut off, this woman starts to talk. And she starts in with a very deep conversation. She's like, "Can I turn my back on an obligation or on a vow that I made to the Lord?" And Sister Faustina's honest. She's like, no, you can't, because you'll always be miserable. This is what you're supposed to do. And so they have a chat, and Sister Faustina learns about what's going on in her life and about this vow, this promise that she made to God. And as they're talking, this lady feels a huge relief. A burden has been lifted. She's talked it out. She's heard what Sister Faustina has to say. I imagine Sister Faustina is still in her habit. Maybe that's why the lady felt she could talk about spiritual things. Anyway, they just have a real human connection. And Sister Faustina seems to alleviate a burden for her. When I go to doctor's offices, when I'm at the library, when I'm sitting, at the airport, unless I have something very significant to check on, I try very hard to not be engaged in my phone and don't put headphones in. Now, when I'm on an airplane, sometimes I put in headphones to listen to music or an audiobook or something like that. But for the most part, I try to be very open and very aware of what's going on around me, because you never know what you're going to see, what you're going to witness. And if you look like a person who is open and receptive to an engagement, people are going to be drawn to that. We've so closed ourselves off from each other with our technology that we're not having those real human conversations where we just talk and get to know one another, or, discuss what's going on in the world, or, just find out who people are. We're not doing that anymore. And it's sad to me, because everybody's hurting, everybody feels lonely, and yet we're doing it to ourselves. When we could just take the headphones out, put the phone away, and just sit and watch. The world is so interesting. People are so interesting. It's just something that it makes me sad that we're missing that we've lost that. And it's a great opportunity for us to evangelize, because when I've done this and when my family has done this, people take notice. And we've been told numerous times, it's so nice to see a family sitting together, not all staring at their phones. And, usually my husband or I will say something like, yeah, we just want to spend this time together and see the world around us and, enjoy each other's company. And there's always like this light bulb that goes off in their head, like, maybe I should do this too. So it's just something that, I would highly encourage, because as Christians, we need to be aware of people, and we might see someone that's suffering. Or it just allows us to be open to people, and that we look like a welcoming, receptive person that would be willing to carry on a conversation. And I think that's really important. So that's all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. Tomorrow is day 96. I will see you then. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.